Okay, in this video I'm going to look at hybrid defense, and what I want to do is explain a bit of a rough analysis I've done as to what I'm going to describe as the 400 rule. And what it is basically a strategy for looking at with a 2 golem hybrid for a Lavaloon. What's a strategy for defending against that. Now, just to start, so if you have a look at say a 2 golem hybrid, the golems, if they're max 6,300 hit points each, the little golemites 1,260. So 2 golems by themselves 8,820 hit points each. If you've got a max king, another 4,453 hit points. So you've got a total of effectively 22,093 hit points, which are basically providing a shield for the queen, because the queen does most. The golems do a little bit of damage. The king does, basically takes out the queen, but really most of the damage of the hybrid is done by the queen. And so the trick to beating the hybrid in terms of defense is to chew up that 22,000 hit points as fast as you can, so there's not enough time for the queen to take down what it needs to complete the hybrid. Now, just some rough numbers, just so you get a feel for it. So, if you can get the clan castle and the queen to do in the order of 4,000 points of damage, so that might be, if you queen up for 5 seconds and you CC for a couple of seconds, that'll get to 4,000. Then that leaves basically 18,000 hit points for the defense buildings to get. Now, if you manage to inflict an average of 400 damage per second on the golems and the king, basically what that means is you've got 18,000 hit points divided by 400 damage per second. That gives basically 45 seconds till the queen's exposed. Now the queen at max level has got a 5-second cloak and 2,000 hit points. So a 5-second cloak will protect her for 5 seconds. Then you've got 2,000 hit points of 400 DPS is 5 seconds. That gives, at 400 DPS, the queen's dead in about 55 seconds. Now a hybrid typically takes a minute to a minute 10 to complete, depending on, and that depends on this base layout and where you've got your town hall and all these types of things. So it's a whole nother video. But the sort of rule of thumb I'm working to at the moment in terms of hybrid defense is I want the golems and the king to be under 400 damage per second all through the raid. Now, what I'll do now is have a look at, I'm not saying this base I've got is un-3-starable, but have a look at how I've implemented that on the current base. So the question is, how do you implement the 400 rule? Now, firstly, let me explain how the rule works. So what the rule is, it's got 3 bits to it. One is, anywhere where a golem can sit on the outside of a wall on your base, you want under at least 400 DPS. So let's have a look over here. Say the golem parked here, it would be under the cannon. Let's pretend I've got maximum cannons, even though I haven't. I need to do some farming. But say that's 100 DPS from there, 80 from the bow, so it's 180. The Tesla might go it, so let's count the Tesla. So 280, 380 with the archer tower, probably 480 with the other cannon. So that wall has 380 to 480 hit points of damage along that. Depending if the Tesla's activated. So that wall's pretty well covered. Plus it's also got the mortar, so probably 390 to 490. So that wall's okay. Then you sort of take another bit of the base. We might take the archer tower down. Let's see if the archer tower down here. Let's have a look at that. So you've got the if the archer tower was the wall outside the archer tower was being hit, you'd have 100 from the archer tower, 150, say 200. The bow would grab it. So 250, and the bow 350, and you probably get the cannon as well. So that's 450. So that wall's probably okay, and so it's not rocket. It's not science in terms of you've got to be roughly right, but basically that's around about 400 points of damage on that wall just there. And you go around the base, and the idea is at each point of on the outer wall of the base where you've got a defense, you want at least 400 points of damage. Now, the next part of the rule is any specific defense needs to be covered by at least 400 points of damage. So let's have a look at, what shall we pick? Let's pick that archer tower, right? So if a golem's on that archer tower, you've got 100 from the archer tower, 200, 300, 380, plus this 430. So that's under 400 points of damage. And the idea is you need to go into your base and keep testing and try and get the damage over 400, because if you can get the damage over 400, as you saw in the analysis I showed earlier, that means the king and the golems are going to die within about 45 seconds, which means the hybrid's over in 55. That's usually not enough to complete your hybrid, and your hybrid should hold. So let's now the trick to this. So that's the first two parts of the rule. Now the third bit is a bit tricky, right? So when you get into the middle of the base, like say here, and what's going to happen is the hybrid approach from this corner. That means your Tesla, your mortar, this archer tower, this archer tower is probably gone. And so the question is, so when you assess the damage, say that AD is under, you need to think about what's been taken out before. And so say they approach from this corner near the archer tower. The way you'd actually calculate it is you say, well, I've got the cannon, so 100, 180, 230, then I've got another 40 here, 270, then I've got the bow here, so 350. So they haven't quite got 400 there, but you can see it. Actually, no. But they've also got the king and the queen. So with the king and the queen, it's likely to be over, but you can see that's slightly undercooked at 350. But the trick is, on average, as the attack goes through your base, you need to keep it over 400 DPS. And if it's over 400 DPS, so probably ignoring the king, queen, and the CC, your hybrid should hold. So that's that's sort of the basic strategy I'm running, and basically if you can do that, then your hybrid should go down, or the golems and the king should not last long enough that the hybrid can be successful. So that's something to play with around on your base. It's also really useful in terms of attack. If you see a part of the base with really low DPS where you can get through, like you saw in the 5 lava raid a bit earlier, that's the place to hit, because that's where your hybrid's more likely to be successful. Just touch on a couple of other things about this base, because I think it's, I'm not saying that it can't be 3-starred, because goodness knows what base can't be 3-starred at the moment, but it has survived 10 3-star attempts, so it's going okay. And I think the best has been 78, second best 71, and then most of them have been below 60. But it's a very, very tough base on the hybrid. And because it's so tough on the hybrid, what I've done is I've actually used 2 air skellies, because I'm applying the 400 rule. And that way, if they do actually manage to pull off the hybrid at some point, they're going to have extra air skellies to deal with as they go around the base. Now, in terms of this base, I'll just touch on, actually the one thing I will touch on, which is I think interesting, is you'll notice this base is not in the center of the map. Now, why have I done that? And what, because this is another really useful tip for defense. Well, if you drop a queen over here, that queen can pick off those 2 barracks, the 2 barracks here and here, can pick off those 2 barracks without triggering the cannons. So they're effectively free buildings. So what you do is, if you do have a part of your base that's more, well, if you have a part of the base where the queen can drop back far enough, the queen can pick off free buildings. So the first thing you need to do there is, if you've got a part of the base where the queen range can be used, you need to make sure that your DPS is a bit higher in that part of the base, so the hybrid can't work, because you don't want to be giving away free buildings. But the thing is, by pushing 2 sides of the base against the wall, and you notice that's the 2 sides of the base where the king isn't activated, so they're probably the weaker sides of the base. What that means is you can't drop your queen far enough that, or minions or anything like that far enough away that your queen can pick off some free buildings before you drop your golems. So what you're doing is by pushing those two edges of the base to the edge, that means that they've actually got to drop their golems before they drop their queen, and the golems start taking damage straight away because there are no free buildings if you actually push up the base to the edge. So that was it's a base which is designed in a sort of typical sort of design with the centered CC and queen. The actual center of the base was in between the clan castle and the queen, and then what I've done is I've pushed it against the side, so the two sides where you might have a crack at taking out the queen without the king, which is it's a tough ask, but making sure I'm not giving away free buildings on that side. Anyway, that's I wanted to cover that 400 rule. Play around with it. I think it's really useful for both attack and defense. For attack, look at the parts of the base where you reckon you can get through for less than 400 DPS, and for defense, if you can have 400 DPS at all points of the base, it'll work really well. Actually, the one other thing I should cover about the 400 rule is typically the 400 rule works at 1 point with, say both golems in 1 point. Typically, the golems are spread. And so I think I mentioned earlier that the golems, if they are spread, will often, if you're running the 400 rule, will often be under 500 or 600 points of damage. If they're under 500 or 600 points of damage and you can maintain that as an average throughout the defense, the golems, like at 600 DPS, the golems last with a king about 25 or 30 seconds. And no way hybrid works. So play around with that concept for defense. I find it really, really useful. The base is holding at the moment. I'm sure it will be cracked. Every base seems to be falling at the moment, but so far it's holding, and I think it's a really useful tip in terms of setting a hybrid defense.